that. So I'm just trying to do a screen share, if that's possible. Start here. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Yeah, that's good, thanks. So if you could just let anybody in who comes in while I'm going through this, because I'll probably miss them, thanks. So welcome everybody, and what we're going to be talking about today, hopefully will give you a lot of food for thought and perhaps put you in a position that a lot of people in the UK really are very, very ignorant about at the moment. And it's not just about living in another country. It's about a massive cultural revolution that seems to be going on right in front of our eyes. But you probably wouldn't see it from the UK. So I want to talk a little bit about the factors of what's come together to, create this sort of perfect storm in a way, which has caused this cultural revolution. But just to let you know what we're talking about is we're talking about the opportunity, really, I suppose, to move to warmer climes and nicer, more outdoor lifestyles. But specifically tonight, we're talking about Portugal. And there's two reasons for that. One is I moved to Portugal almost a year ago. It will be a year on Friday of this week that I took the ferry. I'd never been to Portugal before in my life, and we took the ferry over with the motorhome. And 4 days later, we arrived down here in the Algarve. Now, just so you know, this is the Iberian Peninsula, which is just north of Africa here. And Portugal is a little sort of chunk right on the western side there. And you've probably heard about the Algarve because it's in all the travel brochures and magazines and everything else. And the Algarve is basically this bit down here at the bottom here. And what the main feature, I suppose, of the Algarve is that although it is in the Atlantic, this southern coast is much more sheltered than this main western coast up here, where you've got these famous surfing waves of Nazari and places like that. So it's a little bit more sheltered, and the climate down here does tend to be slightly kinder than further up or into the center of Portugal. But frankly, in respect of people who move to Portugal, people are moving all over. So it's not just about the Algarve. We'll talk with Simo a bit later about some of the sort of history of the place, but it used to belong to this lot here, the Moors, and they had a lot of southern Europe, and the sort of an area around here they called the West, and the Moorish word for the West is Algarve, which is why this area here is ended up being called the Algarve, and that's where we currently live, and we live at the western end of the Algarve, near a town called Lagos, not to be confused with Lagos, which is the capital of Nigeria. So we're only 25 minutes from the most southern western tip, and then you turn the corner and get these fantastic waves that come in there. The whole area is completely blessed with beaches, mountains, you name it. We'll go into that in a bit. So I'm just going to pop, while I talk, I'm going to pop a slideshow up, which is basically photos that I've taken. And some of them I've taken only today and yesterday. So I just thought that would be more interesting than looking at my mug while I talk. So I'm just going to see if I can start that off. Okay, so starting that off, and this first slide was us in the motorhome on the ferry a year ago. And obviously it was a very scary time, and we all had to wear masks and the dog had to wear a muzzle. So that was a funny thing that we had, that all three of us were wearing muzzles of different sort on the ferry. Okay, so that's just going to go on in the background, and you can just browse that because it's while I talk. But just a little bit about what I called the cultural revolution. I mean, when we go out in Lagos and meet people on beach dog walks or playing golf or in the restaurants and things, one thing that has become very apparent is that the people that are moving here are not exclusively retirees, and certainly that used to be the case, that people who would retire, become expats in Portugal or in Spain or wherever, and obviously for great reasons they would do that. But what we're now seeing is people in their 20s, people in their 30s, people with kids, young kids, teenage kids. There is a huge migration, really, of people. And it's hard to put a number on it at the moment, but I would say hundreds of people every day are arriving in Portugal in order to set up life here, at least for the time being. And in fact, looking at the join, we've got Pietro who's just joined us, and he's one of them. Pietro is a single guy. He's not yet 50, are you, Pietro? And he's moved to Lisbon, centre of the action in the city there. So he would be very much able to answer some of the questions from that point of view. So what we're finding is that it's no longer just retirees that are moving here. And what's facilitated that? Why is that? Well, it's fairly obvious, why people might be attracted. You go out on holiday. I don't think it's unusual to be lying on the beach on your holiday thinking, oh, I'd love to live here, or could I live here? But what we've seen over the past 10 years or so is a improvement in the communications, in the technological communications, which is actually facilitating people to come and work remotely. Some people are working remotely as employees. Others are self-employed people. There's a lot of digital people who are working remotely out here. But of course, the one thing that the one group of people for whom working remotely is relatively straightforward is landlords. So those property investors that have built up buy-to-hold portfolios, it really is something that is achievable to come and work remotely. I think the other thing which sort of made the perfect storm was COVID itself, in that the experiment, the live experiment that went on with regard to home working, something that people had perhaps flirted with and talked about, and no bosses really had the courage to actually make the decision and trial it out. But it was forced upon everybody for a sustained period of time, and it worked. And a lot of people are not going back to the office in the way that they had been before COVID. And the acceptability of home working has really facilitated this migration of people. Personally, I think this migration is just going to accelerate. I think it's going to get more and more. What we haven't had so much in the past year is the hordes of holidaymakers that you would normally get every summer. I think that as the pandemic sort of retracts and life goes back to normal, we'll be getting many, many more people coming out to the beaches, lying on the beaches saying, you know what, I could live here. I don't need to be back where I was. And so therein lies this, what I call this cultural revolution. So I think you can work it out for yourself, what might happen with real estate, with values, with life down on the costas or down by the coasts. But the fact is that I cannot really see a situation that would prevent an acceleration of the number of people wanting and actually moving down to within 20 minutes of the coast, not just in Portugal, but throughout all of the warmer climes in the southern Mediterranean. So I think the question that you ought to be posing to yourself, or I'll be posing to you now, that you can be thinking about while we're talking this evening, is can you work remotely? Now, there'll be some of you who may be focusing more on developments, who probably think that working remotely is probably a step too far, and living. It could be that you may think about getting a base over here. It could be that you think that in time to come, you may be able to move over here. Just that's something to ponder as we're talking. And later on, hopefully, my wife Elena will join us. She's currently in the UK. She's gone to her business for a week, and she's spending a week in the UK at her business, which has staff and a premises, and she's been running that remotely for 12 months now. So we can talk to her about running a business remotely that, you may think perhaps that wouldn't have been possible. Okay, so I'm going to just stop the share now, and we're going to introduce Tony. Now, I did do this talk with Piotr. Piotr had a number of people. He had a retreat over here a few months ago and invited me to come and talk to his group of people then. And I felt I really wanted to focus on some of the lifestyle aspects of being over here. I wanted to say, look, yeah, okay, there's tax savings and everything else, but God, it shouldn't be tax bringing you over here. There are so many other reasons why I think if you can, it's a fantastic thing to do. So I started with that, and I spent about 20 minutes talking about that, and I could see people, giving me, being kind to me. And then I said, okay, I'm now going to talk about the tax. And everybody sort of eyes lit up and said, come on then, what's the bottom line? Tell me about how I can be richer, how I can cut my costs and everything else. So, and then the pens came out and everybody started making notes. So I thought I'd learn from that and decide I'm perhaps not the right person to be telling you about these fantastic lifestyle issues. We're going to kick off on the bottom line. We're going to kick off on the tax. And Tony Jesus has very, very kindly agreed, and he's got his colleague with him, Patrick, to come on tonight. Tony and Patrick specialize in the international tax, particularly the treaties that exist between different countries for the purpose of relocation. It's a little bit complex. It certainly has taken some time for me to get my head fully around it, and perhaps I still haven't got it fully around it. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from Tony tonight. And while Tony's answering my questions, please feel free to use the chat box here and start to pen any questions that you might have yourself. And then perhaps at the right moment, we'll dig into that, try to bring you in on screen to ask you questions, or we'll read them out from the chat. So, Tony, thanks so much for coming on. Can we see you, or?
I don't think, no. I'm sorry, but will have to be another time. But I'll give you a bit of my background. I was born in Madeira. I'm Portuguese. I grew up in South Africa, and I qualified as a chartered accountant in South Africa with one of the big four, if you can call it. At that stage, wasn't one of the big four. That's giving my age away. Anyway, I've done international tax courses in South Africa and Portugal, and I worked about 16 years for a service provider in Madeira. That's basically a bit about my background. Anyway, on the talking about the tax in Portugal, in 2009, the Portuguese government, in its wisdom, decided to give some tax breaks to foreigners. But initially, there was a big, let's call it the civil servants were really against it. So the system didn't really work very well. For the first 5 or 6 years, there were very, very few people were able to get this status of the tax breaks. After about 5 years, there were only about 1,000 people that qualified for this tax break. And at that stage, Portugal was kind of reorganizing because of the financial crisis, which Portugal was hit very badly. So anyway, one of the government changed let's call it the practice, made it much easier to apply for this non-habitual residence status. So it's become fairly easy to apply for it, but care still needs to be taken, especially people who already have properties in Portugal, etc., etc. It can be some complications, and then I could advise it. Each case is a case. Anyway, the main benefits of the NHR, the non-habitual residence thing, which was initially sold, was what the so-called high value added professions. They would come and work in Portugal and basically benefit from a top limit of 20% tax for a period of 10 years. The basic qualification was that the person had not been a Portuguese tax resident in the previous 5 years. And that basic rule still stands. So you can't have been resident in Portugal the previous 5 years. The benefit is for 10 years. And it's Portuguese tax years, which is equal to the calendar year. It's not the same as the UK tax year, which runs from April. Well, it's actually April to April, but and that's not relevant. So it's the Portuguese tax years that we're always talking about. The main benefits, under this high value professions, if a person qualifies, the tax is 20%. That's under if the person is employed. If under self-employment, it can reduce to 15%, but don't count on it. Count that work on the basis of 20% tax break for the professions qualifying.
Just to interrupt at that point, Tony, just and clarifying the point. You are at the moment referring to the tax that is paid on income that is earned in Portugal.
No,
okay.
Not quite.
Okay.
If you're a resident in Portugal, you're taxed on a worldwide income basis. It's similar to the UK, US, Canada. Most countries in the world tax residents on a worldwide income basis. Yeah. So if you're resident in Portugal, in let's take a typical digital, which is very fashionable nowadays, digital nomads, somebody who's a computer programmer in Portugal and is providing services to companies in the UK, Germany, US, all over the place, Korea. It really doesn't matter. That service is being provided from Portugal. That person is resident in Portugal. You know, his life is in Portugal. And he would have declared to the tax authorities that he is resident in Portugal. If that is the case, then he would be taxed on a worldwide income basis. If he doesn't ask for this non-habitual resident status, you'll be taxed under normal tax tables in Portugal, and these can go up to 48% and it's not such a high incomes. You're talking on 80,000 and above, you hit the 48%. So you reach quite high rates very rapidly. But for those who qualify and have applied, the crucial factor, people have to apply for this this status. It's not, let's say, it's almost automatically granted, but if you don't apply, you don't get it. You know, it's a gift, but if you don't, it's like having your coupon. If you go to the supermarket and you got a coupon, but you keep the coupon in your pocket, you won't get the discount. And the same with this. And the basic rule is, if you are, let's say, for people who've become resident in 2021, they have until 31 March 2022 to request this status. If the status is requested on the 1st of April, it's too late. Okay, so that's a very, very important point to bear in mind. If you become resident in 2021, you've got to do it until 31 March 2022. If you become resident in the 1st of January 2022, under current laws, it will go until 31 March 2023. In terms of these professions, I'll just give you an idea. It goes from doctors, university lecturers, but they got to be appointed university professors, engineers, all the IT professions. I think people have heard, we've had Madonna was resident in Portugal. She benefited from, I assume she benefited from this status. Authors, musicians, and artists, singers, translators, that's a recent addition, reporters, what else? It's got an extensive list, and we can go through it. It does not, for example, lawyers, accountants, advertising executives and such do not benefit from this. Okay, they might be able to get away if they are directors of companies or managers. But a kind of a warning: when people run companies outside Portugal, from Portugal, we could have a problem of what's so-called management and control. If what do you call it, the overseas company could have a deemed permanent establishment in Portugal if the managers or the people resident to those companies are running those companies from Portugal. You need utmost care how it is run. In other words, things like signing contracts in Portugal, signing minutes and such, that should there be an investigation, the tax authorities could say, this company has got a permanent establishment in Portugal. You have declared dividends out of this company, but we think the source is in Portugal, and theoretically in my view anyway, they can disregard the one of the benefits, which is foreign dividends being tax-free, okay, for the duration of the 10 years. That's to do with running companies from a Portuguese territory, companies situated outside Portugal. It could be deemed that those companies are effectively Portuguese companies. The other benefit.
Sorry, Tony, just a quick interruption on that point alone, that the company could be deemed resident in Portugal, even though it's a UK limited company.
Exactly.
Is this a situation where you have seen or are seeing challenges?
No, I haven't seen challenges, but I always warn clients to make sure if they set him a company, and if you in the Algarve and you got to let's say you got to sign some contracts or minutes, the Spanish border just around the corner, I would say get you in your car, go to the Spanish side, document it, keep the receipts or claim it from the company, and document it thoroughly that this was done in Spain. And should the tax authority try to attack this at a future date, if you would be able to prove that the business of the company wasn't run from Portugal.
Yeah, and these are the sort of key minutes of meetings, signing off of the annual accounts, this sort of thing.
So that sort of thing. But the safest is if you're setting a company, and I've got to distinguish between, let's call it a digital type nomad, and where companies have got a physical body to kick. If a company has got employees in the UK, let's say I've got one particular example, an estate agency, though the directors live well, one of the directors lives in Portugal, there's staff, there's an office, and the property deals are done in the UK, the person does contribute in that. I think it would be very difficult for the Portuguese tax authority in that case to challenge it. But let's say you're running the same sort of business, and it's a pure digital business, I would say there is grounds, at least theoretically, for the Portuguese tax authority to be able to attack such a plan. If somebody is doing it, I don't say don't do it, but just be aware of the risks and try to minimize the risks.
This is a little pitfall just to navigate and be careful of.
And be aware that it could be challenged. The more, let's say, the more structured it's got, let's say, we're talking, I'm using the UK as an example, but it could be the US or any other country. The more structure it's got in the other country, the better. If you've got a director, let's say in the UK, you rent an office. Now, I would say a serviced office won't work. You've got an employee or two, or subcontracting people, and the accounts reflect as such. So if the tax authority attacks and saying, I do have a business in the UK, I go to the UK for meetings, and here's the minutes, and if they ask for expense vouchers and all that, there would be supporting documents to support it. So the more substance there is, let's say in the UK, the less likely to be challenged. If we've got no substance at all, there is a risk. If there's no substance at all, make sure anything is done, make sure it's outside, well, anything substantial is done outside Portuguese territory. Do it go across the across Huelva to the Guadiana River across to Huelva, or take a flight to London or whatever, and get the details signed there. So the more defenses you have, the less likely. Let's say if the tax authority starts attacking, and if you've got adequate defenses, then what will happen? They will look for a softer target elsewhere. That's my take on management and control. Just a few things around this. The main benefits I talked about, the employment and running business from Portugal. Of course, if a person is employed in Portugal, working remotely, say for a company in the UK, and there is a lot of misconception on this. If the person is physically in Portugal, the double tax treaty provides that Portugal has got primary taxing rights. The UK is not supposed to tax people, and this is in the double tax treaty. To be taxed in the UK, only if the person spends more than 183 days in the UK in the tax year. In practice, there's even HMRC, I've seen once or twice incorrect advice and all that. It is the written, well, when it goes up the scale, it gets sorted out. But let's say at the ordinary phone call, sometimes they get it wrong. If the person spends more than 183 days in, there's three conditions basically for the UK to be able to tax that person. It's basically the 183 days, the company is a UK company and it does not get charged to Portugal. Normally, two conditions apply. The third condition, the 183 days does not apply, in practice does not apply, so that those salaries, if you're working for UK employer, the UK employer is not entitled to tax. In practice, the best thing is to approach HMRC, change the address, say you're resident in Portugal, and ask for the HMRC to issue an NT tax code, and they do it. It's at least in the UK, it's usually not a problem. You know, if you're talking in genuine employment, cross-border employment, that's the basic rule. In terms of the NHR, whether you're taxed at the 20% or the normal tax tables depends on the occupation. Okay, so if it's a medical doctor offering advice through let's call it some analyzing X-rays or heart, what do you call it, graphs and all that sort of thing, is resident in Portugal, is taxed on the worldwide income, but the tax will be limited to 20%, provided, if he's employed permanently, provided he has applied for the NHR status. Okay. Some of the other benefits and issues around
I can't
this.
hear anybody. Can anybody hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
I can hear you, yes. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. The NHR regulation. Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear me?
Rupert?
Hello?
I'll tell her in chat. Okay, please carry on, Tony.
Okay. Okay. In terms of the NHR benefits, some of the main benefits is interest, dividends, rental income, capital gains tax, on the disposal of fixed property. All those transactions under normal regulations, they are taxable in Portugal, okay? But under the NHR for those 10 years, basically Portugal say we will not tax you on those transactions for the 10 years. There's a slight proviso if the income comes from a blacklisted countries such as Jersey, Guernsey, Isle of Man, Bahamas, that they are on the Portuguese blacklist. They will not benefit from these benefits. The other kind of transaction which I come across in a regular basis, people might have a private portfolio and they buy and sell shares or other investments. Those are not tax-free under the NHR regulations. They are taxable in Portugal. So if somebody dabbles in the stock exchange, they are taxed at normal rates. If it's a substantial capital gains or thing, they will be taxed at a maximum 28%. Okay, the taxpayer has got a choice whether to be taxed at 28% or in terms of the normal tax tables. So competent accountant has got to work out if the tax is more than 28% under normal tax tables, then must opt for the cheaper rate. What else can I say? Things like dividends and such from countries such as France. France will impose withholding taxes, though they are limited to 15% in terms of the double tax treaty. If they have imposed extra, it would be, the taxpayer would have to be furnished what do you call the fiscal residence certificates and so on to the share registrar, so that there's a limit of 15% provided in most double tax treaties. Not necessarily all, but essentially the bulk of them.
So Tony, just bringing it sort of home to the majority of our audience, assuming currently UK citizens where the income is being earned in the UK, if we look at two scenarios really for property investors, landlords, whereby in the one scenario, the landlord may have a portfolio of 10 properties owned in their own name, earning rental income from that. If they were in Portugal under the NHR regime, which lasts for 10 years, what would be the tax on their income from their rental?
Okay, on that scenario, the UK retains the right to tax the rental income. So, but I'll come back to that a bit later. Portugal has got under the general rules has got a second cut at the cake. And Portuguese tax rates tend to be higher. Under the NHR, rental income and the capital gains on the disposal of any of those properties, which Portugal also gets a cut at the cake, would not be taxed if it's done within those 10 years. On the 11th year, Portugal will tax, if somebody's got a portfolio and sells a property in the 10th year, be tax-free. On the 11th year, it will be taxable. So let's say UK taxes, let's say hypothetically 15%, Portugal will tax, effective rate could go up to say about 24-25%, though we do have allowances for inflation, and that's so the effective rate might actually be a bit lower. But so essentially, for 10 years, no tax on property rental income or property capital gains. If it is in a corporate body, then the dividends will be tax-free, and the tax authority will not attack that kind of structure because it's because it's got to do with the property, even if it's managed from Portugal. I think it would be very difficult for the tax authority to attack it. I'm not saying there isn't a risk that they will not attack it, but I think the chances of success by the tax authority would be remote if somebody extracted dividends from a property-rich structure.
Okay, Peter has come in with an important question relevant to this section of what you're talking about. He's saying it's not that we're talking about rental income now. We could talk about capital gains in the same sentence, I understand, but it's not taxed in Portugal, as you've clearly pointed out here. But Peter's saying, would it be taxed in the UK? Yes.
Well, let's say, let's take a scenario. If somebody earns 12,000 pounds of rental income or net rental income, it declared the tax return in the UK, but the effective tax would be zero because of the tax allowance in the UK. But if somebody earns, say, 50,000 pounds, there would be the allowance of 12,000, and you would have to pay tax on the 38,000 in the UK. But Portugal wouldn't tax it any further. It is declarable. There are reporting obligations, but it wouldn't be taxable in Portugal in those particular instances.
And Tony, we now sort of coming on to some more complex detail here, but if the individual who's getting this rental income is not a UK resident for tax,
yes,
because they're living in Portugal all the time and they pass the test, that they don't have the ties to the UK that would make them subject to tax in the UK.
Well, I know there's this dichotomy of ties in that. One thing I've got to make clear that the normal structure of is like this. The UK hasn't got a let's call it a constitution, but the countries that have got a constitution, what happens is this: the constitution sits at the top, and then international treaties at the next step, and then ordinary tax laws. When we're talking about taxes, in the case, for example, the UK, the UK normally, with exception with Northern Ireland issues and all that, will respect international treaties above its ordinary its ordinary laws. So what I'm saying, these ties and so on and so forth, they are under ordinary tax law. So when we look whether the UK can tax a transaction or not, you've got to look at the rules of the double tax treaty. And the normal rules of the double tax treaty, you have to look at the article on residence. The article on residence normally basically says if the person, if the center of vital interests are in Portugal, then that would be determined that the person is resident in Portugal. And then you can look into the 183 days rules and all that. But the crucial factor is where is the center of life of those people. So if it could happen that a person says is resident in Portugal, and that UK tax authorities says, no, you're still a member of the local golf club, you're still a member of the local church, you're a member of this and a member of that. your pets are still in the UK, your children go to school in the UK and all that, I think it would be difficult to argue to the UK tax authorities that the centre of life has changed. But let's say
Tony, just dropping back one moment on that, because we're trying to get some clarity on the key issue here, and I really do appreciate the complexities of how the UK would determine whether or not you are resident in the UK for tax purposes, and this ties test is part of it. But without going into the nitty-gritty of this, there are clearly scenarios where somebody can be completely free of the UK tax system, and because they pass all the relevant criteria, if you like, and they don't have all of these ties to the UK and everything else. And so let's just look at that circumstance for a minute. Let's not get into the whys and wherefores of whether or not you might be a UK resident. Let's say, for the sake of this discussion, you are definitely not a UK resident for tax purposes, and you definitely are a Portuguese resident under NHR. Could you just go back to that situation with the rental income? The in your personal name, the rental income is coming from the UK. What would be the tax that person would pay, if anything?
Okay, I really can't. I'm not a UK tax expert. I've got clients from all over the world in each country. I would suggest if somebody's making a move, and if the rental income, let's say, is above 12,000, which is the 12,500, which is the personal allowance, that person should consult a UK based advisor to get clarity on the tax liabilities on the UK on the rental income. I wouldn't like to. I know some basics, but I don't know sufficient about the UK. On the Portuguese tax side, it's tax-free for, what do you call it, for the 10 years rental income and capital gains tax. And that I'm clear. But the person...
Okay, so we'll get that point clarified, Tony. Thanks for that. Does it not stand to reason that if you are not a tax resident, you're not a taxpayer in the UK, you will not be able to pay the tax?
Rupert, no, it doesn't quite work like this. Normally, countries don't want to forego income on physical property situated in their territory. You can take that as a general rule. I'm not saying that in respect to the UK, that is the case, but there's a general rule: if you own property in Germany, in France, in Netherlands, Italy, they all in the reverse from Portugal. Every country will try to tax income derived from property. Portugal does that, US, most countries. I'm not sure if the exact rules of the UK. That's why specific advice should be requested from in the UK situation.
Yeah, and moving on, the situation with a limited company. If you have your properties, which many UK property investors have in a limited company, the situation, as I understand it, is that when you draw dividends from a limited company, then those dividends are also tax-free under NHR.
Okay, as I understand it, the dividends being paid by a UK company to somebody who's a non-resident in UK, the UK does not impose withholding taxes. Okay, but that should be confirmed. From a Portuguese side, if the person has got the NHR status, that rental income will not be taxed. whether it's dividends or the rental income. The dividends are also tax-free from the UK. The exception, the only exception is blacklisted countries.
Mm-hmm. And just looking down my notes here, Tony, I also note that there are other forms of income under the NHR which are favourable in tax.
Okay, I've given them a slight breakdown. I said dividends, interest, royalties. Okay, those are on the thing. Employment income is quite tricky. The legislation says if the other country can tax it, then it would be tax-free. It can happen in some situations. I had an interesting example of a pilot, B8 pilot, that a combination of different rules, and he paid a little bit of tax in the UK, even though the pilot was resident in Portugal, but the specific rules provided the UK could tax for the effective days that he was resident in the UK. So if you can imagine, they get a healthy salary, but if effectively, because he paid tax on it, everything else was tax-free. Mm-hmm. The general rule is, let's say in a most practical sense, salaries will be taxed in Portugal, end of story. There's no, that subject to tax will virtually, only in very exceptional circumstances will the UK be able to tax it. So in those cases, it will not be tax-free in Portugal. Okay, so you need to clear with HMRC to say, to get the NT code, you might have to provide fiscal residency certificates from Portugal saying this person is a genuine resident in Portugal, and HMRC might start asking, further questions. For example, are you married? Do you own a home in Portugal? Do you own a home in Portugal, in the UK? How much time you spend in both countries? And they could, if it's a genuine move to Portugal, then the HMRC will issue that no tax code. And then in Portugal, you'll either be taxed either the 20% if it's a high value added occupation, or according to the Portuguese normal tax rules. And if the person, let's say, is employed in Portugal, say is an IT programmer and he works for a Portuguese company or something, the tax will be 20%, or according to tax tables if it's more convenient, or if it's more favorable.
And you mentioned interest is not taxed in Portugal under the NHR regime.
Right.
And that's quite interesting for people who do hold properties in UK limited companies, because it's quite common that property owning companies have been funded by the individual shareholders, for example, via a director's loan. It's possible that the interest could be charged by the individual to the company, and that would not be taxed, would it, in Portugal?
Not according to the rules, no.
No, okay. And of course, the cost of that interest to the company would be reducing the corporation tax that the company has to pay. I mean, the one thing that you can never get away from a company position is that it's a UK limited company, and therefore corporation tax is due to HMRC. It doesn't matter where you live. That's the situation with the corporation tax. But obviously the corporation tax bill will be reduced if you have more expenses in the company, and those expenses could be interest charged on
sorry,
loans.
So just on that issue, Rupert, in that case, you got to, one of the classical ways of running these type of companies is to pay a salary to the directors' shareholders. In this case, it's probably best to take it out interest and dividends, because the salary in those cases, let's say, theoretically will be taxed in Portugal. Though exactly. In a property-rich company, we can argue, though we got that permanent establishment rule, and I would be loath to pay a salary out of even property companies. So the best thing is to stay out of salaries.
Yeah. And there is, a further complication with interest in that companies that pay interest to individuals in the UK are subject to withholding tax that the company has to hold back. However, if the individual is able, and this is something I can state because my accountant is going through this with me at the moment, if the individual is not a UK resident for tax purposes, then there's a process by which the company can be exempted from the withholding tax. And this is a process that I'm going through at the moment, guided by my UK accountant. So there are, it's a slightly convoluted path. However, there are some significant tax advantages for people who are under the NHR system here in Portugal, but specifically, and this is an important point that Tony's sort of worked hard to press and emphasize, is that there will be a difference to those people in the NHR system, whether they happen to be subject to UK tax or whether they happen to be not subject to UK tax. And this is all to do with, it's quite complex, the rules, but they're stated in the treaty, and they are basically to do with the ties that you have back to the UK, and also can the number of ties can actually influence the number of days that you spend in the UK in any tax year. But there are ways that you can be, if you like, outside of the UK tax system and in the NHR system, and that's where the real tax benefits come for people in that situation. Is that a fair summary, Tony?
Yeah, it's a fair summary. Yeah, in terms of the ties and that, with all this type of structures, always advise clients, if you're doing it, do it properly. You're keeping feet in both sides of the in the two countries. It could lead to problems, to risks. So make a clear cut, you're on one side or the other.
Yeah. So one of the key things here would be the family home. If you move to Portugal, you buy a house over here, you become a resident, you apply for NHR, but you maintain your family home back in the UK, then you're unlikely to escape the fact that you are still a UK tax resident as well.
Well, in that case, yeah. If you maintain the family home and you, let's say, you rent her out, then it's obvious that in that case it would escape. But if you maintain the family home and spend, let's say, 4 months a year in there, I think there's a real risk. MRC will basically say your immigration or your settling in Portugal is not genuine. Yeah. So and just one thing I haven't touched at all, and maybe it'll apply to some of the
please do.
The older people over here, is that the NHR has also got another benefit, which is that pensions are form part of this legislation, though now it's not as favorable as before. Before, pensions were totally tax-free if they were from abroad, and now they're required to pay a 10% tax. So it's not as favorable as before. But there are other also annuities. Some people have private investments and extract private pensions in the form of annuities. Those are favorable tax, and that has got nothing to do with the NHR rules as well. Basically, Portugal only subject to tax 15% of self-invested annuities. Well, self-invested is not quite like that. So if you save funds and you bought a private pension, an annuity, and you can prove it, then let's say you pull out 10,000 income annually, only 1,500 of that would be subject to tax, and that's under the general rules.
Mm-hmm. And with the pensions, of course, in the UK, the situation is 25% of the pension can be drawn down totally tax-free. However, the remaining 75% is taxed then at your normal UK marginal rates. So if we flip that into a situation where you're resident in Portugal under an HR and you're not taxable in the UK, then it's 10% of your drawings. So basically 100% of the pension will be taxed at 10%. So that's a comparator there. It's a more favourable situation to be drawing your pension in Portugal than in the UK. However, those that have the opportunity to could draw down their 25% before they move to Portugal, have their tax-free amounts in the UK. And then they have 75% of their pension left to draw, and that would then be charged at 10%.
Yeah, that's an important to note, because there is a risk that the capital drawdown, the 25%, if you do it after you become resident in Portugal, the UK will not tax it, but Portugal will. So going around in circles, best to do it before you become resident.
And they move. Yeah. So there are, it's not just a case of jumping on a plane. There are things that need to be prepared and considered. The family home, particularly the centres of vital interest in the UK, and the issue with pension if you happen to be over 55 and in a position to mitigate the pension situation. But I'm really quite keen, Tony, just to go back and talk and really focus on this situation, that if you have done things properly and you are in this situation where you are a Portuguese resident under NHR and you don't have any tax ties to the UK, and you had a portfolio of properties in your own name, if you were to sell those properties during the time of your NHR, then am I right in my understanding that there'll be no capital gains tax to pay?
In Portugal, but the UK, I can't answer for UK tax laws. Okay. From my Portuguese point of view, yes.
Right.
From the UK,
I have answers in my mind, but I'm very, very conscious that I'm not a tax advisor, and I'm not going to say anything out myself because I'm just not qualified to say it. But we'll get that point clarified, and I'll put that out afterwards with some clarification. But there are some significant advantages there. I also, and this is an area that I'm not fully au fait with, but I also understand that there is a point in time with capital gains, which is dating back to 2015, and that it resets the capital gains clock, and therefore people who have maybe had properties for 25 years and are sitting on substantial capital gains, they have the opportunity to massively reduce their capital gains through this process. But again, we'll get that clarified. Tony's been fantastic with us on the Portuguese side and the Portuguese tax and how the Portuguese tax authorities will deal with tax under NHR. So we've just got to get a little bit more clarification on the UK side from that point of view. Many thanks.
Okay, I just want to
please do
touch one or two, which really got nothing to do with NHR and that. If you're planning to move to Portugal, and sometimes people do plan way in advance, is that, for example, you are allowed to bring, I don't know if people are aware, but motor cars in Portugal are rather expensive due to taxes on motor cars. If you're moving to Portugal, you can bring a motor car tax in the sense of VAT and duty free in the move, say, from the UK to Portugal, provided the motor car has been owned for at least 6 months, and the registration in the Portuguese side is completed within 1 year. I've had clients who have actually pre-planned it beforehand. They've gone and they bought cars, left-hand steering wheels from cars from Germany, brought it to the UK, registered, owned it for 6 months, and then they did the move. So that can be done. So if you're planning, and of course
that's
to move,
per person, isn't it? So if there's
per person,
yeah.
But I've had the instance in one family. The wife had a car and the husband had a car, except when it got here, the documents were both in the husband's name. The wife drove the car. the reality, it was in the husband's name. You've got to be careful.
Well. And of course, if you've leased the car in the UK, then you don't own it at all, or contract hire or something like that.
I think there are ways around that.
Yeah.
One of the things is the customs do check. You'd have to have proof that of daily life for the 6 months before the car came over, and that would be things like electricity, water bills, and other type of bills. And it's important to, if you're planning to come over, to get those. If you're planning to bring a motor vehicle, that consult somebody like me who know. I'm not the only one doing this, but a bit of pre-planning. The other thing is the car documents, the bills and everything should be consistent, in the same address. So if you let's say your car is registered to an address in Birmingham, and you've got property, holiday cottage in Cornwall, and then you present 2 different addresses, that's not going to work.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just Tony, what I'd like to move on to talk about. Clearly, a year ago when I came, Elena and I came over, almost a year to the date. It's this Friday we left and got on the ferry. We arrived here on the Saturday. And on the Monday morning, we met Simao, who is here in the room tonight, outside the town hall known as the Camara in Lagos. And half an hour later, we walked out with pieces of paper which were embossed and everything, say that we're residents of Portugal. It was the simplest situation you could imagine. It was a little bit mind-blowing for us. We didn't expect it. But of course, now, since Brexit, that's not quite as easy. And there are, in order to become a resident, there are processes that you need to go through. Okay, it seems that the bureaucracy is slow, and there are some issues with the bureaucracy. However, it is a process, and you know, it's normally you would be able to achieve this residency. But could we just talk about some of the main? I know there are lots of different forms of residency, and ultimately they're visas. But can we talk about sort of the main methods that somebody from the UK would be using to get residency in Portugal now, Tony?
In terms of the residency, you know, the legal residency, I suggest we, I don't know, Patrick seems to have vanished. Are you around, Patrick?
Yeah.
He's vanished.
No, I'm here. I'm over here. I'm over here.
Sorry, Patrick. You got a better handle on the different types of visas and all that, the processes to on residence. I think you're the more appropriate person. I would say just we may have one or two people that are might have, let's say, Irish passports or some European passports. In those cases, the same rule as it applied to you, Rupert. The process is very simple. The other process, the other residences, things, I'd rather leave it to Patrick to talk about it rather than me.
Just on your point about Ireland, I understand that Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland are the same. Although Northern Ireland is obviously part of the UK, you can, from Northern Ireland, you can literally do what we did and just come over and go and get your residence.
Well, Northern Irish people can get an Irish passport. So I believe, I know a few people and they have got Irish passports.
Yeah. Okay. So what about the rest of us? And what about people in the UK that didn't come here before Brexit, Patrick?
Let Patrick talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd like to introduce myself to everybody who does not know me. So I'm a Portuguese lawyer. I've been a Portuguese lawyer for 16 years, and I started working in the same service company as Tony in the beginning. That's how I know him. Then after that, I began working in a law company, and that's where I've been up till now. And I've worked mainly with the free trade zone and everything that's entitled to it. In the last 2 years, mainly with the COVID. We started seeing that a lot of people were coming over to Portugal and were asking us help. And so we saw that many of the service providers are coming out here and they're trying to sell the golden visa. And there's a lot of reasons why people want to sell the golden visa, is because it's the most profitable for companies, because you'll have to get property in 500,000 euros, or at least the investment in €500,000, and it's what they try and sell you. But what we've noticed in our experience, most people that are coming over to Portugal, not everybody's got €500,000 to invest. And if they do have €500,000 to invest, they don't want to put it all in a property. So that might not be for you. So what we're trying to help people now with is with the D7 visa, and the D7 visa it's got its perks as well, but obviously the investment part is not there. On the contrary to what the golden visa demands, the golden visa demands that you at least in most circumstances have the €500,000 to invest. The D7 visa does not make you do that. Obviously, there is a difference in the sense that, you know, in a golden visa, you can come here and stay 1 week in Portugal per year. You do not have to move here permanently. With the D7 visa, you do have to do that. The D7 visa, like the golden visa, you know, it gives you the right to live and work and study in Portugal. You know, an applicant may include dependent child or parents. You know, there's the visa-free travel, obviously, through the Schengen area of the 26 countries. You know, there's an option to take employment or to establish a business in Portugal. You know, you can also apply for the NHR scheme that Tony has spoken about. You can also qualify after 5 years. You can qualify to become a Portuguese citizen. When you get the D7 visa, when you do apply for the D7 visa and you do get it, you'll have exactly the same rights as a Portuguese resident, which would include obviously the healthcare and education. For most people, yeah, maybe what would be interesting would be the healthcare. You know, because healthcare is practically free of charge. It's free of charge in everything. Obviously, you do have some little expenses here and there, but it depends. But most of the cases, it's free of charge. So a person who's poor or a person who's rich can have access to a health system, and the health system is not bad at all. It's considered to be, you know, very good, you know, ranked in Europe. The education system is also very well off. The problem with the visas lately in the last 2 years that we've noticed, you know, there's been a very big application, you know, to Portugal. Portugal has become the Florida of Europe. We've noticed that it's not only, you know, Brexit refugees, if I may use that term, that are coming to Portugal, but we've already been seeing a lot of, you know, citizens from the United States coming over, especially in Madeira, which, you know, we didn't see much of Americans here. All of a sudden, we're beginning to see more and more Americans coming to Madeira. I think this is also going to increase, especially next year, because I don't know if you've heard, but the Portuguese government has confirmed that the country's golden visa program will be subject to several changes starting from the 1st of January of 2022. And the biggest changes that, you know, that is going to affect maybe the listeners that are here is that you won't be able to invest no more than $500,000 in Lisbon, in Porto and Algarve. And we know that a lot of the, you know, English-speaking people like the Algarve and they like Lisbon in particular. It's not only the climate, but, you know, that's the places they seek more. This is going to change from 2022 onwards. So Madeira is going to become, it's obviously going to climb up in the ranks, because the island of Madeira, you know, Funchal, it's the third most important city of Portugal. Many people in the mainland don't know this, but it's Funchal. It's not Coimbra. It's not nothing. It's Funchal. You know, so the things are going to start picking up here. The golden visa is going to be something that people are going to start looking for, and they're going to start looking at Madeira. Madeira's got the advantage that, you know, we a 4-hour flight trip from the United Kingdom. We went 1 hour and a half from Lisbon. We're 3 hours away from, you know, from Spain, from Germany. We 5 hours away from Italy. So we can get anywhere in Europe, you know, with the international flights we have from Madeira. We can get anywhere you know, in 5-6 hours. You can get to the furthest parts of Europe. So Madeira is going to be, you know, Funchal principally is going to be a place where the golden visa is going to take, you know, it's going to take maybe more interest in the people that are deciding to move to Portugal. Even so, like we said, the golden visa is not for everybody. I presume that the D7 will be the most applicable one. Obviously, the D7 does have a set of rules that have to apply. You'll have to start working on the D7 visa back home. You'll have to ask for a visa in this sense, you know, through the VFS system. Once you get that, you'll have to come over to Portugal and then apply for the D7 visa. So it's not something that you just move to Portugal and let's get it. We have noticed that people have done this. They've come over to Portugal, you know, from the United Kingdom, and it's okay, now I want to have a D7 visa. And this has created a set of particulars for us where we have to put the person working, we have to set up companies, so it becomes expensive because people didn't do their homework beforehand. So you have to start this application in your home country, wherever you are. You cannot come to Portugal and say, now I'm going to be a resident. You can't, you know. With Brexit, you're coming over and you come to Portugal and you want to stay here longer than, you know, than your visa permits you, you're going to be an illegal person here. So you're against the law. So the process has to start over back home. It does not mean that if you're here and you can't get away, you want to stay here. It doesn't mean we can't get a solution for you. It's just it's going to take a very long process to get it. The experience we're having with the D7 visas, everything is taking very long. So people start getting very weary, when you come and you apply for your D7 visa and everything's okay and you made your motivation of interest, to the authorities. And then you start waiting 1 month, 2 months, and you start seeing this going, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, you're waiting to get your appointment in SEF. Once you get your appointment in SEF, it's very quick. It will take you about 2 weeks to get your residency card at home. But the process is the waiting, from when you make your application, your D7 application, when you're in Portugal, all the way to get your appointment in SEF, it takes a while. And with the COVID, this doesn't help. Some situations it's slightly less. You can get everything done in 4 months, but usually I tell people, expect a 6 months to 7 month period, to get your residency card. I don't know if there's any questions related to this.
That was great, Patrick. Can I just ask, because I'm sure it's going through a few people's minds, that that they can see that there are some potential significant savings in tax if they move over to Portugal, and particularly with this capital gains situation, if they were to dispose of their properties during that time. Is these processes, do they commit you for 10 years or are they reversible?
Can I jump in? Yeah. At any time, people can move back and forth. What I advise, if people would say to the tax authorities, we are now tax resident, and let's say 2 years later they move back to the UK, they need to advise the tax authority that of their new address. That's often a step that is missed, but it's most important. If just to stop the tax authority, demanding tax returns because tax returns haven't been submitted for 3 years or something like that. So it's just a bit of compliance, but it's essential, and there's no restriction.
So it is possible. If somebody said, I only want to spend 3 years over in Portugal, sell my portfolio and get the gains, and then move back to the UK. That's fine. That's doable.
What you got to just on that, from a Portuguese point of view, that is not a problem.
Yeah.
From a UK point of view, I would suggest that if somebody has come to Portugal, sold their properties, then move immediately back to the UK, I would be cautious about that. I would make sure at least say, I'm not a UK tax advisor, but I've been working in this game for a long time. I would say, get some specific advice from the UK. When can you go back for good? If we're talking large tax savings while you were abroad.
Yeah. But what we can say is that it's not a case that you're committing. It's not a case.
Not from a Portuguese tax side.
You can't go back. Yeah.
No.
That's good. And Simon has asked quite an interesting question here. Is Tony, if you apply for the citizenship after the 5 years, then what happens with the tax? I mean, I'm making the assumption here that the NHR still has 5 years to run. Is that correct?
The NHR applies to Portuguese citizens that, for example, are resident in the UK, America, South Africa. The basic requirement is that they were not Portuguese tax resident in the previous 5 years. It's got nothing to do, it's a tax status, it's got nothing to do with citizenship.
Yeah, so whether you're resident or citizenship is a quite separate issue to your tax status.
They are separate issues. Yeah. There are some issues, let's say for retirees, let's say, for example, if they were military officers and become okay, military officer is probably a bad example, but let's run with that example and get Portuguese nationality. Is that their pensions, which would have been taxed in the UK, will then become taxable in Portugal. But it's got to do with specific wording in the double tax treaty. Let's say in the main, most people don't have to worry about those technicalities, but if somebody's got that specific, if they're getting government pensions, they need to be a bit careful about that one.
And of course, if you are going to apply for citizenship, which you're allowed to do after 5 years of being a resident here, then you will need to be pretty fluent with the language. There are some pretty strong sort of cultural attachments that you need to prove in order to get the citizenship. But then, of course, if you do achieve the citizenship, you have an EU passport. Once again, which is something that we lost at the end of last year.
If you're a resident, that ties would kind of be there.
Yeah.
You know, if you own a property and you're a resident and you have a bank account and all that, the biggest hurdle would, especially for older people, would be the language. I would say for younger people, it's probably relatively easy to achieve. Some people can pick up languages well, but from experience, I find older people have some difficulty, because though there is a language requirement, it's not at very high level. It's basically basic understanding of Portuguese, you know, speaking, listening, and reading. I think it's Patrick. What is it? A C2 level, B2? I don't even know.
It's not. Obviously, it's not a level that me and Tony speak, because you know we Portuguese living here for. I'm living here for 24 years. Tony, I don't know, maybe longer. And we still don't understand fully the language. So I wouldn't expect an English person to
and asking for the bill.
No, but it's obviously the basics. You'll have to do it. You'll have to show to the Portuguese authorities that you get by. You're not exactly somebody just says hello and good night and good evening and that's it. No, you'll have to be somebody who gets by, who can get direction. So it's a basic test. It will be a C2 level, I presume. It won't be nothing over complicated. And nobody, it's just to see that you're making the connection with with the language. We're not maybe on the contrary to some Northern European countries and maybe, I don't know, United Kingdom, we're not over obsessive with our language. I mean, Portuguese by norm, we prefer to speak, we're very proud in showing other people that we speak various languages. So most Portuguese, if they speak English, they'll speak to you in English. On the contrary, and I don't want to be rude to anybody that's here, but for example, you go to Spain, they won't speak to you in English, it's their language. Or French, they won't speak to you in English. They got that very, very direct connection, very emotional connection to the language. Portuguese aren't quite like this. And when you get your test and you pass it and you're okay, and they say, oh, this guy is making an effort to speak Portuguese, that is going to be seen well.
And generally, people really do appreciate that you make an effort. You make any effort to speak Portuguese over here, and you get a really good, warm feeling back from people generally, whether it's in the bars, restaurants, the shops, or whatever. But of course, the difficulty, as with everything, is that English is not just our language; it's the international language. And when you're living over here, you're bumping into immigrants all the time, but not just immigrants from the UK. They're from all over Europe. They're from beyond Europe, and of course, English is the common language. So people, it's very rare, certainly in the Algarve, to find a situation where you literally just can't communicate with English.
No, Portugal is a country that we speak. Portugal speaks a lot of English, and if you see, and you're in Portugal, you notice that, for example, we don't have any dubbing in our films and our movies. All the movies are in English with subtitles, and Portuguese people are very against. You're dubbing an English film. You can't hear the original voice cast.
Yeah.
So it's a cultural thing with us. We're not that connected to our language. I don't know why. I'll have to look at the history lessons. We're not that connected with our language. I know everybody will speak English here, and maybe that will make your life more difficult, because then you're not, because everybody speaks English, you won't make the effort to try and learn Portuguese. This can be a barrier. This can be a barrier.
Indeed, it does. But some questions just come up here, after the 10 years, when the NHR ends, my assumption to that question, Simon, is that you would be going on to normal Portuguese tax rates based on the marginal rates that exist at that time. But Tony, can you just verify that?
Yeah, exactly. The benefits expire and you be taxed as any ordinary Portuguese resident, or whatever the law is at that point in time.
Yeah. So you really do need to make hay while the sun shines. And, you know, for some people listening tonight, that will be weighing in their mind, you know, when will the kids be going to university? These sorts of thoughts, you know, when would be the right time to come out, even if maybe beforehand you might want to buy a holiday home over here and just come for less than 90 days every 180, which is the current restrictions for anyone in the UK going to anywhere in Europe, in EU. So we have another question, Patrick. The requirements for the D7 visa, I do believe you need to have a certain amount of income, but it's not very onerous, is it?
No, it's well, obviously, you know, there's certain requirements for the D7 visa, but I think the one that you know, maybe will be in most people's mind is how much do I need? Obviously, you'll have to have, you know, at least you'll have to look at the people that are coming over. You know, how many adults are coming, how many children are coming. But just quickly, at least one of, you know, you'll have to calculate it with how much is our minimum wage. And our minimum wage, you have to calculate more or less 600 euros a month times by a 14-month year, not 12 months. So you'll have to put that by so deep down, what you're going to get is you're going to have the first adult, it's going to be around 8,000 something euros. I don't have the round figures. And then you're going to have then 50% of that for the second adult, and then the children, so forth. What we usually advise people when they come over to Portugal, you know, at least have 20,000 euros in a Portuguese bank account. Along with the 20,000 euros, you know, more or less, that you'll show in a Portuguese bank account. If you're beginning to get a pension, you know, you'll have to show that you'll be able to get this pension in Portugal. Because, you know, some people have come in and said, look, I'm getting a pension in the United States, but are you going to get it in Portugal? And they don't show proof of it, and it doesn't qualify. So you'll have to pay attention to this. So, you know, have a Portuguese bank account, set up a Portuguese bank account, get at least 20,000 euros in that Portuguese bank account, and then show the authorities that, you know, you're going to get a pension or you're going to get some funds from overseas, and that it can come into the country. You know, you have to show proof of that. Third of all, if you are married, if you're, you know, you'll have to show that status. And some people come here with a marriage certificate of, you know, when they got married, and you say, no, it was for life, and here's my marriage certificate, and it's like 10 years old. It doesn't work. So you'll have to get an updated marriage certificate. It can't be older than 6 months. It's just the way it is, and it has to be apostilled so it can be recognized in Portugal. So coming here with a document, just a plain document, won't work. You know, deep down, this is just summarizing the basic requirements for the D7 visa.
Yep, that's great. Thanks, Patrick. I hope that answers the question there. So so basically we've got two quite separate things here. One is, you know, the residency, which the visa, which we're talking about, which actually gets you here and gets you the residency status. And then secondly, we've got the NHR, which is the tax status that you can apply for, and the benefits that we've talked about with the NHR that comes in. So I'm just going to, and hopefully you'll stick around and we may be able to come back to you. Perhaps before moving on, does anybody want to raise their hand if they've got anything pressing that they want to ask either Tony or Patrick right now? Excellent. Okay, well, if they're around, then by all means, keep popping questions in. We've talked about the financial gains, financial benefits of moving here. When Elena and I moved over here last December, we really didn't know a great deal about what the tax advantages were. We got accused of being tax exiles, and frankly, it wasn't until we were here that it became clear to me what the tax benefits were, and I was a little bit taken aback in a nice way, to be honest. We came here because we wanted to come here, because we wanted to enjoy a different lifestyle. And so for me, being here is not about the tax benefits, it's about the lifestyle benefits. And we have many friends here. Some of our friends have children who are toddlers, some have children who are at school age, some are older and grown-up children back in the UK. And frankly, you know, I haven't met anybody who hasn't moved over here that doesn't say it's a tremendously improved lifestyle that they're enjoying. Of course, everything's not for everyone, and you know, some people may be happier back in the UK, but the people who come here and stay here certainly stay here. They almost 100% would say that the lifestyle over here is superior to the lifestyle in the UK. So I just want to talk a little bit about that, and I want to bring in if Elena's still in the, is Elena still in the room, or is she? Oh yes, she is. I'll ask Elena to come on. Hi, so this is my wife Elena, who's currently in the UK actually, having a board meeting, I imagine. Or if she it wasn't there for a board meeting, she's very quickly decided to have one in the space of the last hour. Elena, how is it from your point of view?
Oh, hello. Well, my story starts with that I didn't really want to go. So Rupert had this idea, which I thought was absolutely crazy, that let's leave the UK in the middle of winter, in the middle of COVID, and go to a country we've never been to and live there. I was like, excellent. So it was, from my viewpoint, I love UK, and I still love UK. So you can tell by my accent, I wasn't born in the UK, so I love UK out of choice. And I still think, you know, it is a great country, and I enjoy being here when I am here. But having moved to Portugal, I've realized that, you know, loving UK is good, but Portugal is really good too. So there are some benefits, such as beach walks in November, when I still can swim in the sea and sunbathe. I think, you know, that's all right. I was still sunbathing literally 10 days ago in my garden, and it was quite warm. I think it was, in my little spot, it was about 25 degrees. And I used to, when I first moved, I used to, like, when I would have a sunny day, I would try not to do as much work, because, you know, in the UK, when you have a sunny day and you work from home, you're like, oh, enjoy the sun, and then do a bit of work when it's raining. And then the following day is sunny, and every day is sunny. And I'm like, okay, so I need to somehow change my psyche. That doesn't matter, it's a sunny day, do some work anyway, because every day is a sunny day. Like things which are important to me as a woman, for example, is thing like food I can get in the supermarket. Again, I quite enjoy Ocado in the UK and Marks and Spencer's, and it, like, the quality of food and like different types of food was quite important to me. And I thought, you know, in the UK I found all my favorite types of products that I would buy, and now I would have to change and learn a brand new system, and am I gonna like it? I have to say the choice in Portuguese supermarkets is not as great as in the UK, I'll be honest with you. However, it is makes up by the fact that everything you have in a supermarket is nice. Like you don't need to, like in some supermarkets in the UK, you have to know what you're buying to get the taste you want, because, if you buy something which is own make or let's say tomatoes, okay, that's my main thing. I love tomatoes. And in the UK, I would have to search for the right tomatoes, because if you don't search for them, you might just eat plastic. Where in Portugal, you can just pick it up off the shelf and it's going to be of good quality. So there isn't as much choice, but the quality is either good or really good. So
is there more organic as well?
I go to the organic market, which is on every Wednesday. So I get quite a lot of, it's an organic market for people like us expats, because it's literally people that have their own land and allotments. They come and sell their organic produce there. That quality is even more superior than supermarkets. That's just wow. I mean, I haven't had food like that since I worked on the allotment many years ago, on my grandma's allotment, and we grew it. Things are cheaper. Food is not cheaper, I'll be honest with you. Food is not that much cheaper. Wine is much cheaper, and wine is good, and you're not going to find, I think the Portuguese keep all the good wine for themselves in Portugal. So wine is really good, and like a premium wine would be like 15 euros or 20 euros. That would be in the locked cupboard, and that would be really, really good. Like a good wine, if you pay about 8 euros, you get a good wine. If you pay 15, 20 euros, you get like really good wine. It took me, it took me about a month to get used to driving on the other side of the road. And a few times I found myself on the wrong side of the road. But I think Portuguese are always used to crazy English women, but I'm not sure which side of the road they're on. I didn't even get sworn at or anything. I was like, okay, it's weird. People are very calm about it. When I first moved to UK, I had to get used to drive on the UK side of the road, and I had quite a lot of aggro about that. And then I moved to Portugal. I had to get used to driving back on the other side of the road. But after about a month, I completely got used to it.
What about the social life?
The social life is better. People are more open. Generally, we live in the expat area, and a lot of our friends are English, and a lot of our neighbors are English. And people are a lot more open. So I think the key is there are less people in Portugal than there are in the UK. So everything is much calmer. And at the same time, people are more open to making new acquaintances. Like when you live in the UK and you would have your friendship group, and like for a woman, for example, you would have a friendship group to do with the children, let's say, and then you have a friendship group to do with work. But once people have enough, you can only deal with so many friends, generally. So once you have that quota of friends, people are not really open to making new acquaintances. Where when people come to Portugal and they're pretty much like they've come there or they've lived there for a while, but there aren't that, they don't have a huge amount of friends. People are more open to making new connections and making new friends, and weather's nice, so you can go for a walk together all the time. And there's loads of restaurants like that. The food is very nice in Portugal. One of the things I really like is the food.
And what about health?
Oh yeah. So we had a private insurance in the UK where for two of us we would pay about £300 a month, and with COVID you couldn't even use it. Like, nothing was available anyway. I think we were with Aviva health insurance in the UK. When we came to Portugal, I got us private insurance as well. I think we pay around about €220 a month for two of us. And you can use it. First of all, you can use it for primary care. Like if there are, you can never get a GP appointment unless you ring up on a certain time of the certain day and all that. In Portugal, with private healthcare, the primary healthcare is covered as well. So you can literally ring up and check it out. You ring up and the app says to you that you can see a GP. Either it says 5 minutes or less than 5 minutes, or it says, oh, I'm sorry, we're so busy, you're going to have to wait 15 minutes online. And you see a GP on video and you describe your problem, and they either give you a prescription straight away or they refer you to a specialist. And again, they issue you with that referral there and then online, and then you can ring up the hospital, your local private hospital, and have your appointment with specialist. And when you ring up and you want your appointment with specialist, and you think, even with private, I'm probably going to have to, wait for a couple of weeks, and they say, oh, we're sorry, we can't see you today. Today we're busy. Would tomorrow be okay? And the same like with dentists, like to book somewhere, literally to book somewhere, you don't have to book way in advance. If you want something, you probably will get it tomorrow. And if somebody is really busy, maybe the day after. And that's across all the different appointments, like hairdressers, nails, doctors. The country is not overpopulated, so there is infrastructure and availability in that infrastructure.
So you're currently in our service department, and by the way, I've just had a booking in for the day you leave. So that's Wednesday, isn't it, this week? But and downstairs is your beauty clinic. So it's a year on Friday that we left. And so you've run this business in the UK from Portugal. You're there now. You went there for a week, didn't you, earlier in the year? I would have thought most people would be thinking, if they had that sort of business, they're tied to it. They couldn't come and live abroad.
I think it's how you run it. Obviously, I have staff that have been with me for a while, that I've grown from the day business has started, and they're very well qualified. They're still in their 20s. They're sort of in their late 20s. So I have core staff which run the business as such, and then I have that core staff training the new staff that we need to hire. But generally with my business, my responsibilities are now, I do a lot of marketing, I do compliance, I do accounts, and we have CCTV in the clinic, so I can sort of see what's happening on a daily basis if I wanted to, and I communicate with them on the messenger chat. They are in treatments regularly. In terms of, if you were a single practitioner, of course, you couldn't be running a business in the UK of this nature. If you set the business up professionally, it actually has released me from dealing with day-to-day minutiae to thinking more strategically about the business and about the future of the business and what I actually want to achieve with it, rather than think about are the towels clean and have they done the bins, because if they haven't, nothing I can do.
And how do you think your staff feel? Do they feel abandoned that the boss isn't there, or how do they feel about it?
Well, I wouldn't say that they feel abandoned, because I'm not sure they would have told me. I do talk to them on a daily basis. I talk to them all the time. I'm there to answer any questions if they're not sure about something. Complaints and complications, I still deal with them. So, this sort of, as a boss, there is a pyramid of shit and it ends at the top. So I'm still at the top of the pyramid. So I still deal with really difficult cases and I deal with legal issues and things like that. I am available to them. So we work 7 days a week. So I say that not to contact me on Saturdays or Sundays, but in between I am there. From time to time, I even divert the calls to my phone, because the way the clinic is set up, I can divert the phones online through the online portal. I can divert the main phone to myself. I record the calls to see what's been advised is correct, and I come to see them. When we went to Portugal, I said that I'm going to come once a month for a week. So far, I have come once in August and once I'm here now.
So twice in a year.
Yeah, twice in a year. But obviously we didn't have a typical year, because between January and May, the clinic was shut. So I would say twice in 6 months. I've come. And we have sort of, when I come, we have, I do appraisals, I do appraisal reviews, we have team days out, I take them out to a restaurant, we go for a walk, we have a proper catch up. And one of the things that obviously it brought me to the point that I have to give my main staff share options in the business, so they view it as their own business rather than just Elena's business. That was a subject of discussion today. So with giving them share options, so it's no longer just my business, it's their business as well. So Mummy hasn't abandoned them, they're now adults. And
that's a strong tie, because one of the biggest risks you face is your key staff actually just walking out. You wake up one morning to find that you've got to find another member of staff within a few weeks.
I mean, that would be a disaster, I'll be honest. Yeah, but that would be a disaster whether I was in Portugal or the UK, because I don't want to go back to doing very long shifts, because I am a bit older now.
Yeah. Brilliant, thanks for that. And let's just talk about what's facilitated that, because I spoke earlier about this, what I call the cultural revolution, and some of the drivers for that. It's not just about having fast internet, is it? I mean, I noticed that Sue regularly, she lives in North London, she regularly has difficulty with the internet and with these Zoom meetings. We're contracted to 1 gigabyte of internet here. We get more than 500 megabytes at any one time. So we've got really, really powerful internet, I would say, in terms of communication speeds. But with the business, it's that development, because Elena's been talking about the marketing, and she's been talking about all these different software platforms that she's using to run her business, and there's a CRM system. It's all in the cloud. She uses Xero for her accounting. All of these systems and processes have really been developed and facilitated by broadband and by an increasing speed of internet. They'd never be able to sell these packages and things and make them work if everybody was still on dial-up. So I think we're seeing this sort of evolution that's got to a point where it's facilitated the ability for people to do remote working in certain businesses, which traditionally you'd think, how the hell could you remote work this kind of operation? And I think Elaine is a great example there of being able to remote work a physical premises in the UK with a team of staff there. I would like just sort of, if we've got any more questions coming in, then please put them in the chat. But just to finish off this evening, I'd like to bring in Samau, if you're available, and we can have a quick chat about Portugal. Just seeing if he's coming on board. Hi, Samau, how are you doing? Can you unmute? Just need to take you off mute.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, Samau, how are you doing? So I met Samau, as I said earlier, on the sort of the third day I was in the country here. We had been talking beforehand on Messenger. So we made the appointment and met, and Samau's been really helpful. The driving up and down the N125 looking for bits for the motorhome in order to get it through the testing station. I think we took it to that testing station about 5 times before it finally passed. And this was matriculating it, as they call it, which is basically importing it and changing it from UK reg to Portuguese registration. But Samau's also helped us in everything, driving license exchange. He negotiated on a car which we bought remotely up in Porto and had it delivered, and all manner of advice and support. So you know, we've really been really grateful that we've met you, Samau. But I'd like to talk to, we're talking to a group of property people, and I'd like to talk to you. You're into property over here, aren't you? You do property management.
I do property management, taking care about apartments, villas from owners. They just using it once a year, like 2 weeks, 4 weeks. The rest of the time they want to make money and take at least the cost that it brings, or even make money with that.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you been in Lagos?
I moved to Lagos coming from Germany in February 2003, so nearly 20 years now.
Yeah, okay. And I imagine you've seen a change in real estate picture over here in that time, both in the number of properties that are physically here as well as the price of them.
That's true. After the world crisis in 2009, everything got on hold. But let's say like 4 or 5 years ago, it started to be building up, and the old town had a lot of old buildings. They got all renewed and rebuilt, and now often there are homes of people who moved to Portugal, UK, or from France, or from Germany, or lately also a lot of Canadians and from the States. And they're now habiting in the old town or even outside the new apartments with sea view. They are very in, they are popping up quite a lot at the moment.
Mm. And what about values?
And the prices got a little bit crazy, yeah.
Prices have gone crazy.
Yeah.
Give us an example. What's a crazy price?
For example, 3-bedroom apartment, habitable area around 130 square meters, yeah, was, let's say 4 years ago, 350, 400K. And at the moment, we are talking about 750, 800K for the same area. always with sea view. We have to take in this in
Yeah,
consideration.
that's pretty high end, isn't it? I mean,
At the moment, I can give an example of a 2-bedroom apartment in the same building. It's a small 2-bedroom apartment without sea view, just heading north. So you just can see the sunset, let's say like this. It's around 295.
mhm.
If you take the same size apartment to the front with sea view, 410,000 euros. Just
What
a-
about houses? I mean, could you pick up a house for 500,000 euros?
a house or apartment?
A house. People moving from the
Getting
UK,
a
they
house
have
for
their family over, they have a
500,000?
house. Yeah.
At the moment, a little bit more difficult to get houses for 500,000.
Yeah.
It's normally we have to think about, in average in Lagos, at least around 750 plus minus,
Right.
depending
Okay.
which area, depending on the size. But this is the average price at the moment for villas.
If we drove inland 20 minutes,
For example, we would get inside towards Moshik, Algesur, or even to Sagres, then it's get less expensive, but also there we saw a high increase of the prices lately.
yeah. So the increase has been across the board. It's just, you're just giving an illustration of some of the, the prime spots and perhaps the less expensive areas. But what's going to happen next? I mean, do you think that the prices have sort of hit the ceiling, or do you think they're still going to go up more?
At the moment, as Patrick and Tony told us also, a lot of people are moving still to Portugal. And what I hear from people coming from the States, coming from Germany, some of France that have some connections, still a lot of people want to come and have this kind of lifestyle. And some of them also want to take advantage of the tax benefits. But the kind of life that you can have here, 300 days of a year of sun, even a rainy day, it's like 1 hour cloudy, really close cloudy, and maybe raining a little bit. And then the other day, the other part of the day, it's just sunny, comparing to other countries. The prices, I think they will continue a little bit more, and then we will see. But crashing, I don't believe.
I think that the one thing I personally have always advised, or advised, perhaps the wrong word, I've strongly believed against investing in property in the UK for the purpose of capital growth. You look backwards in time, you can see what the capital growth has been. You can never be sure what happens going forwards. And so investing for income has always been, the primary reason that you'd invest in property. And if you get the capital growth, then that's the bonus that comes with it. And, looking at the history, you can kind of hope and expect that in the long term, you're going to get some capital growth out of it. Here, though, I'm trying to find a reason why there would not be more demand for properties over here over the next 10 years. It seems to me that more and more people are seeing the opportunity to move here from all over Europe, from the United States, from South Africa, from all over the world, actually. Do you agree with me that it seems inconceivable that the demand for property will actually drop?
The demand at the moment, if you want to build a new building for yourself, like a villa, you have to wait at the moment, like for a good builder, around 1.5 years, 2 years until you can start your project. So there's a big demand, and still there will be more.
Yeah. What about investment? What about people listening tonight that might think, well, I quite fancy this NHR maybe in 5 years' time, but it would be quite good to get myself a base, maybe an apartment or something, and I could rent it out, use it for myself at certain times of the year. What's the investment opportunities in the investment market like?
Lagos is also called the Pearl of the Algarve, and there's even now, we are now beginning of December, we are quite full comparing to other years, and the demand or the tourists are coming more and more to Lagos. So the prices were growing every year till 2019, and we picked up at the same price in the summer this year. So Lagos is growing. More and more people are coming to Lagos to stay a few days and to enjoy that area. And if I look at my bookings that I have for the next summer, or even January, February, the demand is just high. I never saw this like so much in advance, so many bookings with higher prices than 2019.
So let's talk about the numbers then. So could you describe, one of your units in terms of quality, size, and also tell me what the weekly rent would be for that unit at different times of the year?
For example, an apartment with nice sea view, but it's MC Suite. It's near the marina. You can have a view over the city, over the view over the sea. Nicely decorated swimming pool. We are talking about buying price at the moment. If we see the price that they were sold secondhand after 10 years, we are talking about 350K. And the weekly price, it's around, in the summer, high season, we are talking about 1,800 euros a week.
Okay.
So in the first 2 years, this property made gross sales of 30,000, 35,000 a year.
So that's around 9% yield.
Okay, from that we still have to pay cleaning, everything must be paid from it, but the gross income is around 10%,
Yeah. So even though the property prices have gone up considerably, we're still looking at, reasonable ballparks when it comes to the yield percentages of investment property here. And of course, a lot of people who buy property over here, they rent it out when they're not using it just to cover their costs. They're not really, professional landlords in that regard, are they? But you believe that, with the right choice of property, that there is a good investment opportunity for somebody,
definitely.
particularly if you want to hedge against the capital growth. If you were thinking that you might want to move here in 5 years' time, but the capital prices might go up considerably, that you could actually get in now and yield gross yields, to be fair, 9 to 10% per annum. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I was expecting that to be lower, to be honest. So I'm impressed with that, that's certainly an option. So thanks for that. You're obviously Portuguese. You were German born, weren't you? But you're Portuguese. You're also quite highly educated as well, I have to say. And you've taught me a lot about Portugal and culture and customs and everything else. I'm putting you on the spot here now. In history terms, Portugal and the UK have always had a close relationship. Do you know why that is? What's that all about?
The oldest treatment in the world between two countries is between Portugal and England. It's since the 12th century, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, and that's why we always had, when, for example, Napoleon came to Portugal, English people helped us to kick them back, or in other situations, there were always the help from Portugal to England or from England to Portugal. So that's why there's a certain connection for centuries, we can say.
Was it to do with the Queen marrying a Portuguese king, or you? Or too much there?
You mean the 5 o'clock story?
Go on.
Dona Beatriz, she got married to Sir John V, I think, around 250 years ago, and she introduced into the English royal family or royal court the habit of having the tea at 5 o'clock. So before, it was not usual to drink tea in London, let's say like this, yeah? And from there on, then it got later into British population, and then British people are now famous to celebrate 5 o'clock tea.
That's great. So, if anybody's got any questions for Simao, just pop them into the chat, or put your hand up or anything. He's an absolute wealth of knowledge, to be honest. I just looking. I think he may have just left us. Unfortunately, he's just left us. I was going to ask Piotr if he would just chat with us for a few minutes, because Piotr has moved this year as well to Portugal. He's moved to Lisbon, and by all accounts, he's running his auction business and his property business in the UK from Lisbon, and having a fantastic time and a wonderful time over there. It's a shame he's just left us, because obviously that's a very different setup to the Algarve, and certainly something that would no doubt be more attractive to younger people in that regard, because Lisbon is just the most fantastic city, and if you haven't visited it, then stick it on your bucket list. It definitely is one of the nicest cities to visit in Europe, in my opinion. So I'm going to stop the recording now. Thanks to all the contributors for that. That was fantastic.